This is the 46 of 46 podcast Summit Sessions, where we'll talk all things Adirondack, backcountry, and beyond. From high peak stories and adventures to trail tips and tricks, we'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who passionately climb them. Adirondack maps and spruce traps, bushwhacks and backpacks. It's all here on the 46 of 46 Summit Sessions. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Summit Sessions here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Last week you heard a double episode all about two unbelievable women out on the trail, both gunning for the supported FKT of the 46 high peaks here in the Adirondacks. Over 150 miles and more than 60,000 feet of elevation gained throughout those 46 high peaks. Alyssa Godesky and Sarah Keyes are their names, and both are extraordinary athletes, and what they each accomplished out there was incredible, and made for two terrific stories, might I add. So if you haven't heard those episodes yet, you'll want to go listen to them first and then circle back to this episode, because at that point, this episode will make a whole lot more sense and have a lot more context. So last week, we heard from the athletes attempting to set the supported FKT with the emphasis on FKT, and this week we're going to hear from a crew member with the emphasis on supported. A supported FKT attempt means that there is a support crew aiding the athlete as they try setting the fastest known time on a mountain, a trail, a range, or a route of some kind. The support crew allows the athlete to carry very minimal gear and food, thus moving faster and more efficiently. And then they bring them food here, bring their sleeping bag there, and change of clothes over there. The support crew is crucial to an athlete's success, working tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure the athlete has everything they need. And this week I'll be speaking with one of Sarah Keyes' crew members, Jay Whitbourne, to hear exactly how Sarah's FKT attempt went from a crew standpoint and everything that they had to do. And I hear they got even less sleep than Sarah did. Jay, thanks for coming on the 46 of 46 podcast.
Oh, glad to be here.
Cool. Have you been able to recover from your lack of sleep from the FKT last week or 2 weeks ago now at this point?
Yes, I think I'm pretty much caught up at this point. Now it's just good memories of fun times.
Yeah. Memories that are probably more fun to look at now than they probably were at some points in the moment, I would have to imagine.
There's definitely some stressful points, but overall it was an enjoyable endeavor. I'm just glad I wasn't the one that had to do as much walking.
Sure. Well, you had to do plenty, though, I'm sure. And we'll get into all of that. But before we get into Sarah's FKT attempt and what you guys as a crew did, as the support crew in this supported FKT attempt, hit me with a little background on yourself. How'd you get into the outdoors and the trails, and then how do you know Sarah as well?
Okay. So back in 2014, I actually visited Lake Placid for the first time. It was the first time I'd ever been to the Adirondacks. I grew up in Rochester. To me, it was kind of the other side of the state, and it was a long drive. But at one point, I figured I might as well go see what it was all about. And while I was in town, I stumbled across a woman who was finishing her 46. And she told me all about this journey that she'd been on for the last 3 years and beating cancer in the process. So to me, it kind of seemed like I was at the right place at the right time. And 8 months later, I was a 46. So you could say I kind of caught the bug. I've always enjoyed the outdoors, and that just kind of gave me a reason to go somewhere that I hadn't been and see more of it. And I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, the outdoors, it definitely will do that to a person. Happened to me, happens to seemingly everybody. They just catch it. They get the right time. They're on top of a mountain. You're like, oh, okay, I get it. That makes sense now. Okay, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this for sure. Cool. So I know you and Sarah are dating. How did it come about that you were going to be the crew member?
So she and I discussed this last year when she was first considering really trying to make a comeback after she got injured and hurt her ankle. And the timing just didn't work out. But then this year, with all of her races being canceled, it seemed like it was now or never. So she already had a plan that she and Jan had gone over last year as far as routes and such. So we just kind of sat down, looked at the map, and she put her ideas on the map, and we formulated kind of what she thought was the best sections. And for me at that point, it was determining getting to those points, getting what she was going to need from that point to a next point. And she actually did a very good job of organizing down to the bag for her snacks what was supposed to be at each aid station and what was for her pacers. She was very detailed with it. So it actually, for me on the organization side, was very simple. It was, here's what you have, here's who's going to be there, they're going with you. If anything happens, it was my job to coordinate with them, any alterations. So it was pretty simple, but at the same time, a lot to take in. So she definitely put in a lot of time and homework so that I could take the reins from her at that point. So she could focus on walking, knowing in her mind what she had already set up and knew that I understood it. So I had a very easy job of understanding where I needed to be and what needed to be there. It was just the slight variations that came up that fell in my lap of helping her coordinate as we went through it.
Got it. So Sarah was the mastermind behind everything, which makes sense. Obviously an athlete going for something like this is going to be super meticulous about every detail, and that's what separates the men from the boys.
Yes. She has so much experience with this stuff as far as the different aid stations from all of her races and knowing her body and how it handles this kind of stress, that she really knew what she needed and when she was going to need it. So for me, it was just understanding that.
Cool. So now take me through a little bit about what that planning looked like. So I would have to imagine that a lot of the planning was, how can we logistically get crew? Where can we logistically meet people? I would have to assume that's probably kind of step one as to figuring out who will be where with what. But what did Sarah's breakdown kind of look like for you guys? Take me through even just one day, like what did it kind of actually look like?
She did a really good job of figuring out, as far as her pacers, who would excel at which section. And that had a lot to do with where she would meet people. So, for instance, if she had someone that was just coming in to do Dick's range, she had it set up with me. All right, you need to get this person into this point. And it was not too far in where the person and I could be within cell phone distance or somewhere that we could see where her tracker was to kind of let ourselves know, all right, she's on schedule. And that was the hardest point, was figuring out, is she still on schedule? Do we need to delay? Do we need to speed up? And if so, all right, how long is it going to take us? Because she really wanted everyone to not have to hustle to get to where they were supposed to be. That was the keys. Here's where you need to be. Here's what time I think I'm going to be there. And you don't need to kill yourself. You got to be fresh and ready for her. That was what she wanted, is everybody to be fresh for when they need to take over the pacing part with her.
Sure, that makes sense. Now, I know what a pacer is, but just give us an explanation as to what that means.
So a pacer is someone that is allowed with an athlete that is attempting a FKT or a race, where they can carry the food, the water, carry conversation, just something as simple as being with them. But it's their job to kind of just be the athlete's company. So Sarah had some good friends that were out there, and they would carry the water if she needed them to. She would carry a backpack that we all kind of swapped off that was full of goodies. We'd carry the poles for her if she didn't need them, and kind of just check in with her as far as nutrition, make sure she was staying hydrated. That's the main job, is take all of the thought process away from her other than just walking or running as hard as she can at the time.
Were you the kind of the head of the crew? Who was kind of like in charge of the crew while she was out there? Because obviously she made the plan ahead of time, and then at that point someone else is taking over. Was that you who had that job?
That was me. I took over, and my job was a couple of sections to pace with her, but overall it was coordinating the pacers from the time we got to the Santanonis, where Aaron took off with her, to coordinating the pacers for the next day, which her second pacer would have been Bethany after I had dropped her off on Phelps. So it was kind of ever moving and changing a little bit here and there. So we had Delorme units so I could communicate with all the other pacers. We had a group text so that everybody was on the same page. If there was an alteration in the plan, I sent out a message to everybody. So everyone knew where she was, how she was doing, and just kept it more of a team effort.
Sure. Now, did you ever find, with the Delorme or I guess Garmin owns it now, but with the InReaches, were there ever times where, because I've found in my experience when I have an InReach Explorer Plus as well, sometimes the text messages might not like land for 30 or 45 minutes. At least I've had that experience. Did anything like that happen for you? Because I would imagine if something was changing, that could be quite problematic.
We did have some issues with it being delayed, sometimes 20, 30 minutes. And so we used that as a as need basis, but we tried to have the pacers communicate on summits with me by cell phone service when they could. And if Sarah, for instance, on Allen, she was by herself. So I told her when she got to the summit to make sure she sent me a message so that I could prepare to come pick her up and drop off her pacer. But at the end of her message to say the time that she was on the summit. That way, if it did take an extended period of time, I had a timestamp. I knew when she was there and how much time I had left. So we knew that was kind of a factor because I've used a Garmin or Delorme InReach for about 5 years now. The Adirondacks, they're tough with the tree canopy. And if it's overcast, it's twice as hard. So going into it, we knew not to 100% rely on it, but to use it as a tool as we could.
So now how many crew members did Sarah have total? So obviously some people were pacers. I would imagine some people's jobs were to bring, set up the aid stations. How many people were total, and what was each person's job?
So she had, let me think, 4 running pacers, excluding myself because I was kind of going back and forth between pacing a little bit and running the crew. And then she had 4 pacers that was their job, was just a pacer throughout. She had her roommate Matt, who is an athletic trainer, who came out and worked with her and checked up on her and made sure that everything was going all right. Took care of her feet, took care of her Achilles when that was bothering her, and then she had a couple of friends that were photographers that came along and met her in different places. So just a couple pacers and a couple random people out there just doing odds and ends with her.
If there's 4 people doing all of this, between 4 people, I guess, 4.5 if we include you, but doing this entire race, they're obviously getting very little sleep too. And because they're like, okay, they're going to go do this hike with her here, then they're going to drop off. Then they have to get back somewhere to get to a car at some point, but then they have to be ready to go right back out. So, I mean, pacers are doing, enormous amounts of miles too. Even because you take the high peaks and you still split it up into 4, it's still massive amount of miles and mountains to do. So, were you basically, they would, 2 pacers would switch, then someone has to pick them up. So were you just like driving in, pick this person up, bring them here, then go over here, pick that person up, bring them here, then now you have to go here and run into the trail to meet her here? Is that kind of what your life looked like that week?
It actually wasn't that chaotic because we had Aaron Newell, who did about 100 miles out of the whole attempt with her. So he was the repeat pacer, and Jan Welfer, who also was a repeat. They're the only ones that did multiple sections.
Okay.
And Aaron had his own ride. So the only time that I actually transferred him was when we went down to the Allen Trailhead. And we camped out the night before at the Tahowas Club. So he rode with us there. And then I dropped Sarah off while Aaron slept. I went back. I attempted to sleep. Got about 20 minutes. Picked up Aaron. Dropped him off at the Santanonis with Sarah. And then picked him up on the other side. Everyone else actually had their own ride throughout the entire time, whether it was their own car they drove themselves, or their girlfriend picked them up, or boyfriend picked them up. It was very good that they were able to chauffeur themselves around for the most part, and Aaron just kind of went after it and got himself where he needed to be at all hours of the day. So for me, it was more my job was drop them off, get to the next trailhead,